I had, for lack of a better word, like a psychotic reaction to it.
And didn't understand. It would be a good idea if we just looked at your brain before we started drugging it. It's like, this has been my life. Zak, what a joy. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Looking forward to this. You are doing just some fascinating work, and we have the same goal, which is to get brains and minds of our society way better. So tell me your goal in being here. How can I be helpful to you?
Well, first off, thanks for having me today. It's such a pleasure to be able to be having these conversations, right? And for me, relative to my brain health and my understanding of the brain is, my priorities relate to understanding how not only the things that I've done to self-medicate and so forth, using alcohol and the like, has impacted my potential brain health, in conjunction with how trauma and so forth has related to kind of how it manifests in my brain activity and the like. So there's certain things I know, and there's a whole lot I don't know. And a lot of what I don't know relates to the neuroscience of how things like trauma, drug and alcohol abuse, and so forth have impacted my thinking, potentially my mind state, and different elements relating to it, like anxiety, stress, manifestation of depression, focus, things like that. And so I'm deeply curious and excited to dig in.
Great. So I read your history. I put together a little slide deck for us. I just looked at your scans. I looked at your cognitive testing. So I have sort of a good idea what's going on. So let's see how close I am. So you're the first patient I have had that wanted to know the activity in his default mode network. I love that. And yours is busy. So I will show it to you. So worry and anxiety since early childhood, more positive recently, tended toward disaster thinking, can ruminate. I'll show you that in the brain. High stress, can be irritable. So tell me a bit about your company and what you're trying to accomplish.
Sure. Yeah. So I created the company when I was having a really tough time after I decided to stop self-medicating using alcohol after my dad, who is the entertainer Robin Williams, died by suicide. And I was diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and depression, and was using alcohol to manage that unsuccessfully, to the point where it was manifesting as alcoholism. And
you were how old when your dad died?
I was 31.
You were 31.
Yeah.
And I imagine, I don't know. I mean, from afar, I loved your dad, right? Like those people. But I imagine he got lots of help because he was very public about his cocaine addiction, so on. But was he transmitting that information to you, the help, or not so much?
So I didn't see my father from a very early age. I never saw him drink or use drugs until kind of early 20s and he was open and talking about it. His usage of alcohol became front and center for him. And he ended up relapsing. But for me, growing up there was a stigma associated with alcohol use and the like, but, I had parents who weren't actively, using. And so it wasn't something that I really took notice of until I started using drugs and alcohol to manage my mental health in my early adolescence. Yeah.
And were you close to your dad?
Yeah, we were best friends. We spoke practically every day. Yeah.
And he knew you were drinking and didn't go, hey, buddy, we have this problem in our family. Probably that's a bad idea.
Yeah. So here's the thing is that, when it came to problem drinking and as that evolved into alcoholism, it was probably alcoholism from the get-go. I engaged in a great deal of effort to have it perceived as normal, like normal usage patterns. And so most everyone wasn't aware of how I was using alcohol to self-medicate. But when I stopped, was experiencing more anxiety than I had ever had, depression, and was feeling extremely dysregulated. And my now wife, Olivia, introduced me to nutritional solutions, of which I was really skeptical of at first. I had heard of and had tried specifically, cannabis products to try to manage anxiety, and they were not helping at all. I actually have a cannabis sensitivity, and so they were just making me more anxious. And later I learned,
as they do for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Your scan looks like you had a concussion.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I've seen a lot of scans. So let's look at your brain. So SPECT is a study we do. It basically tells us three things: good activity, too little, or too much. And then my job is to balance it. When we look at your scan, so for someone who drank a lot for a long time, your brain looks pretty good. So there's probably a lot of healing that has gone on in your brain.
I'm very heartened to see this, because there was a period where it was like, and this is part of the, when it comes to long-term alcohol abuse, you're like, oh, you're past a certain threshold. What does it matter anymore? And I had to shift my way of thinking around a healing paradigm. And that was really helpful for me.
Wow. If you would have kept on and I would have met you now, your brain would be way worse.
Yeah.
But you see this hole here and here and here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that could have been when you were 8 and you fell down and hit your head really hard and don't remember anything for a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
It could be that, or it could be something you forgot, but it's clear. And the irritability you have, when I see this in the left temporal lobe, dark thoughts. For like no reason, they can just show up.
So is that a lack of blood flow or
Decreased blood flow?
Decreased blood flow.
So it's clearly in a trauma pattern. I don't know anything else that would cause this specific pattern. So it's a concussion you had sometime in the past, and it can be way better.
Yeah.
So if you do what I ask you to do, it'll all fill it.
Well, I'm a reasonably good listener.
That active scan is so interesting. You have a really busy emotional brain, and it's in a diamond pattern. So if you connect the dots, it looks like a diamond. This is the emotional trauma that's still hanging around.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I think EMDR will be so helpful.
Interesting. Yeah.
For you.
Very open to it.
And so this, you can sort of get stuck on things. The anxiety is here. The mood stuff is here. And it can just bite you when you don't expect it.
Yeah.
But when I see really busy basal ganglia, so this is good, right? Dad had Parkinson's or a Parkinsonian symptom. Your basal ganglia is healthy and busy.
Yeah.
So that's good.
There's no shortage of activity in my mind.
And then if we go back to your occipital lobes, this is where Lewy body gets people first. They're fine. They're healthy.
Yeah.
Despite the concussion, because sometimes concussions will impact that part of the brain. And so this is why 5-HTP works. It's an inhibitory neurotransmitter. Serotonin is an inhibitory neurotransmitter, calms things down. It's why GABA works. It's an inhibitory neurotransmitter. Mm-hmm. It's why Wellbutrin you didn't like, because Wellbutrin's stimulating. It's a dopaminergic neurotransmitter.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I had, for lack of a better word, like a psychotic reaction to it, in that it didn't make me violent or anything, but it created this type of dysregulation that I'd never experienced before. Could not focus, was extremely aggressive, and
wouldn't it be a good idea if we just looked at your brain before we started drugging it? It's like, this has been my life. It's like, why would I do this without a map? See, now I have a map, and so my interventions are just much more effective. And without a map, you're lost. I make a repair formula? I mean, I don't know the breadth of your products, but what I do with my NFL players, really good multiple vitamin, high dose, high quality fish oil, and a brain boost. I think let's find the right supplement cocktail, because that can help repair your brain. This is the formula I used in my NFL work. 80% of our players got better. And that was the only thing they did. Besides, I'm like, there's no complaint. Please don't.
Yeah.
So the supplements, and I think the 5-HTP and GABA you're doing, that's awesome. I keep doing that. It makes perfect sense with your brain. I think hyperbaric oxygen would help. Have you ever heard of havening?
So we do this with my son. The thing I found really helpful for me personally, I call it kind of a stress dump, is transcendental meditation. For me, I hit a state of overwhelm. It's when I get dysregulated and need to regulate myself. It doesn't happen that much, but when it does happen, it requires me, if it's unmanaged, it goes into panic. If it is managed, you go through it. Yeah, I go through it, but it is something that I'm seeking more solutions, tools, and protocols around managing.
Good. Might also try, I have an app called Happy Brain, HAPI Brain. And I have a bunch of tools. I have a Kundalini yoga form of meditation that I've published 3 studies on. Helps balance the brain. It's 12 minutes. There's a loving kindness meditation. There's hypnosis. Have you ever been hypnotized?
No.
Probably be very good at it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's 6 hypnosis audios on it. I do, as if you're in my office.
It's good because I can sit down with my wife, Olivia, and we can go through it. And she's like, well, when I see you act like this is illuminating for me. And, we have a lot of open discussions around.
Well, we didn't scan her.
Yeah. She's next.
I mean, yesterday we did a couple and it was so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would love to explore that.